Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself standing on a humid Florida evening, sometime in the 1990s. The air is thick and warm, carrying the mingled scents of popcorn, beer, and the faint sulfur of spent fireworks. Music spills from doorways around you. Disco from one direction, rock from another, and somewhere in the distance is the unmistakable sound of laughter. You're standing in the heart of Pleasure Island. All around you, people are checking their watches. Some are counting down, and then it begins, a chant rising from thousands of voices. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! Confetti cannons explode. Fireworks burst overhead. Strangers embrace. For one perfect moment, everyone is celebrating together. And here's the thing. It's not December 31st. It's not even close. It might be a Tuesday in April or a Saturday in August or any other random night of the year. Because for 19 years, every single night was New Year's Eve at Walt Disney World. Then came September 27th, 2008. One final countdown, one last burst of fireworks, and then silence. Tonight on Grand and Miraculous, we explore what made Pleasure Island so special. We'll meet the visionaries who created it, walk through the clubs that defined it, and take a deep dive into the legendary Adventurers Club, perhaps the most beloved piece of live entertainment that Disney's ever created. We'll examine why this place inspired such fierce devotion, and we'll reckon with what was lost when the party ended. This is a story of Pleasure Island.
Like a grand and miraculous spaceship, our planet has sailed through the universe of time.
Like a grand and miraculous spaceship.
Grand and miraculous.
Grand and miraculous.
I think with the Muppets, there's sort of an innocence to them, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that appeals to the child in everybody. Because I think everybody is a child in everybody, still.
Well, we all want to build a time machine, Doc. So when you enter Disneyland, you're entering a time machine.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Grand and Miraculous, where we examine Disney attractions through the lens of what makes them truly exceptional. My name's John. I go by the username Spaceship Ears, and this is episode 26, Pleasure Island. Now, for those of you who haven't joined us before, The purpose of this show is to unveil the magic behind theme park attractions, exploring their creators, their immersive worlds, and the moments that keep us coming back, with your voice shaping the journey. I often say that it's not just me up here for spouting for an hour. This is all about you and your voice as well. And before we dive in, I have a few announcements. First, we have a new home. You can now find us at a new website, www.grandandmiraculous.show. So it's no longer grandmiraculous.com. It was a little bit awkward because I had to tell people don't use the and. So now we have the and fully in place. So you can go to www.grandandmiraculous.show. Tonight's code, if you're familiar with the voting system, is ISLE, I-S-L-E. So I'll keep that up for a little bit until you get used to it. Nightbot will be dropping in reminders throughout the chat as well. I also wanted to point out too that we are expanding to social media. So we have an Instagram page now, so you can access that. And we have a Facebook page now. We're getting a little professional here. So Nightbot will be dropping links to those pages as well in chat as well. So follow along for updates, behind the scenes content, and of course announcements about upcoming episodes. As always, I want to give a special thank you to the Disney Streamer Network for featuring our show. DSN has been an incredible platform for Disney content creators, and we're totally honored to be a part of their community. And as always, I want to shine a spotlight on the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. They're the team behind Retro Magic, an event dedicated to preserving and celebrating the history of Walt Disney World. If tonight's episode resonates with you, if you believe that documenting and sharing these stories matters, please consider supporting their work. They're doing essential preservation that benefits all of us who love Disney history. Here's tonight's trivia question to think about as we go. When the Adventurers Club closed, its famous talking masks, if you're familiar with those, from the Mask Room, were relocated to an entirely different Disney park. Where can you find them today? I'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode. For now, see if you can figure it out. Now, before I get into things, I want to pop over to chat and say hi to some folks. So I will go bottom up this time. Miss Karen Cook, how's it going? Mark Langenkamp, I'm so grateful that you're here. Miss Udalali Lane, thank you for being here, Kate. Let's see, scrolling up. Brittany W. Hey, Brittany, great to see you. Thanks for popping in. Mr. Lamont Gray, always fantastic to see you here. Thank you for supporting me. Nico the Greco, it's me, David T. Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's see, Mark Langenkamp, did I call you out? And of course, my dad. Hello, Dad. And Miss K, I see in the chat as well. Mr. Dave Stragan. Dave actually provided some great video I'll be showing a little bit later too. So thank you, Dave. I think I got everybody. So if I didn't, please holler in chat and then I will get back to you at some point. So let me keep this off. Now, before we begin the main program tonight, I want to take a moment. We need to take a moment to honor two very important people. We lost two people in December 2025, two people whose work made episodes like this very possible. The first was Eddie Sato. Eddie Sato is a Disney Imagineer whose creative fingerprints are on some of the most beloved experiences in theme park history. From Main Street USA at Disneyland Paris to countless innovations in how parks tell stories. Now, Eddie understood that great themed entertainment isn't about technology or budgets. It's about emotion. It's about making guests feel something real. He spent his career chasing that magic, and he found it again and again. And of course, Adam the Woo was a pioneer of something different but equally important. Long before Disney vlogging was a genre, Adam was out there with a camera, documenting theme parks with genuine curiosity and infectious enthusiasm. He showed us that you could love these places seriously without taking yourself too seriously. He proved that there was an audience hungry for authentic, thoughtful coverage of the experiences we cherish. Every creator making Disney content today walks a path that he helped clear. Now, both men understood something fundamental, that the stories we tell about these places do matter, that preserving the history and sharing the magic is its own kind of creative work. Tonight's episode is about loss, about a place that disappeared and the people who still carry it with them. It feels fitting to begin by acknowledging that our community has lost two of its brightest lights. Eddie, Adam, thank you. You made this world more grand and more miraculous. Now let's turn to tonight's subject. For those of you joining us for the first time, we evaluate attractions here using 3 criteria: immersion, storytelling, and delight. How well does the experience transport you to another world? How effectively does it tell its story? And how much pure joy does it deliver? Now, this episode tonight is a little bit different from our usual fare. Pleasure Island no longer exists. We're examining something that can only live in memory, in photographs, and in the accounts of those who were there. That adds a layer of historical analysis to our evaluation. And because Pleasure Island was really a collection of different venues, we'll give special attention to the Adventurers Club, the creative pinnacle of the entire complex, and the experience that generated the most passionate response from guests. A note on our focus tonight: we'll tour all of Pleasure Island tonight. This episode centers primarily on the Adventurers Club. Not because the other venues aren't worthwhile, they were, but because the Adventurers Club achieved something unprecedented in Disney entertainment. It's the venue whose loss still resonates most deeply today, and whose influence continues to shape what Disney creates today. As always, let's begin with the people who made it all possible. In the mid-1980s, Walt Disney World had a problem. The Magic Kingdom was thriving. Epcot Center had opened in 1982 to massive crowds. But when the sun went down, something curious happened. Guests left. They didn't go back to their resort rooms. They went into Orlando, to Church Street Station, to the clubs and bars along International Drive. Disney was losing millions of dollars every evening to competitors who offered something that the most magical place on earth couldn't, which was nightlife. The solution required a dedicated team. Rick Rothschild, who you see here, joined Disney in 1978 and served as show producer for the American Adventure at Epcot. He was tapped to produce the entire Pleasure Island project. Chris Carradine, vice president of design development at Walt Disney Imagineering, would head the development team alongside Rothschild. Joe Rohde, a young Imagineer with a fine arts background, came on as art director. Now, this wasn't just about building nightclubs. It was about creating a unified theatrical experience. The nightclub district got its own dedicated team. Rothschild was a show producer, Carradine as architect, and Joe Rohde as art director. John Cavillon as designer, and Craig McNair Wilson as writer and director of improvisation. Now, Carradine, who you see here, was uniquely suited to the challenge. He was actually the son of actor John Carradine. He had spent 28 years at Imagineering before retiring in 2009. For Pleasure Island, his architectural vision was essential. In fact, in an interview in the Orlando Sentinel shortly after opening, Carradine described what they were trying to build. Quote, "I've referred to Pleasure Island as sort of a stand by me for grown-ups. 5,000 or 6,000 people get together and discover adventure," unquote. Well, Carradine set the team on a course to create what they called their very own old industrial area, fallen on hard times, and do a Disney reuse a la Ghirardelli Square. Looking at an aerial photo of the Walt Disney World shopping village, the team noticed a small peninsula at the far end. How easy it would be to make it an island. From there, the mythology grew. We began to riff and created the mythology and backstory of Merriweather Adam Pleasure, Craig McNair Wilson later recalled. We all improvised it, and it grew and grew. Mostly, it was the minds of Carradine, Rohde, and me. Well, Carradine also championed the famous rotating dance floor at Mannequins. We thought the dance floor we literally rotate the social situation and turn it on itself, he explained. It was theatrical thinking applied to nightlife design. Now we must mention this man. Mr. Joe Rohde had joined Disney in 1980, fresh from Occidental College where he studied fine art. By the mid-1980s, he'd caught the attention of the Pleasure Island team, who assigned him as art director for what would become the Adventurers Club. Now, Rhodey didn't just want to theme a place. He wanted to create a living environment that would respond to guests in real time, that would make them feel like they'd stepped into another world entirely. In fact, every year, Rhodey hosted a party for his fellow Imagineers called the Last Days of the Raj. Employees would dress in British colonialism costumes, pith helmets, khaki pants, the whole aesthetic of 1930s exploration. They'd adopt characters and accents and spend the evening pretending to be adventurers returning from exotic expeditions. Well, when Rick Rothschild attended one of these parties, he recognized something pretty special. This wasn't just a party, this was the seed of what would become the Adventurers Club. Craig McNair Wilson later described the club's origins. It came about out of our collective shared love of the world that we were designing and all that circled around it. It was a place we always wanted to go, but it didn't exist. So they built it. The team also drew inspiration from Tamara, a Los Angeles theatrical production performed in an old Elks Hall, where 150 audience members could follow 10 actors through an Italian villa set in the 1930s. Now, Carradine and Wilson saw it multiple times. The concept was revolutionary. Instead of sitting in fixed seats watching a stage, guests could actually move themselves through the space, following different characters, experiencing different overlapping storylines. Well, Joe Rhodey synthesized all of these influences into something entirely new. The Adventurers Club would be his proving ground. Everything that followed, from Kilimanjaro safaris to Expedition Everest to the entire philosophy of Animal Kingdom, traces back to what Joe Rhodey learned here. Now, if Joe Rhodey built the world, there's a man named Roger Cox who gave it a voice. Cox served as a head writer, show producer, and show director for the Adventurers Club. He was responsible for the characters, the shows, the rituals, everything that happened when the doors opened and the guests stepped inside. One character in particular was deeply personal to him, a character named Emile Blihall. Now, Emile was, in Cox's own words, quote, a little guy from Ohio who gains respect and admiration with his awkward but uniquely crowd-pleasing talents, unquote. He was the underdog, the outsider who somehow belonged. Cox felt that the character paralleled his own journey at Disney, an unlikely hero finding his place among legends. The story of Cox's time at Disney was later documented by Sandra Singh Low in a piece called It Happened in Glendale, performed on the radio show This American Life in an episode titled Something for Nothing. What Cox created at the Adventurers Club was unprecedented for Disney, improvisational entertainment, where the script was just a starting point. Characters who would recognize repeat guests by name, stories that evolved over years, a club where you didn't just visit, you actually joined. Cox and Rhodey didn't work alone. Chris Carradine, the vice president and architect, designed the Adventurers Club physical layout. He intentionally made the building larger than needed, allowing for future expansion with additional exhibits. Craig McNair Wilson worked with a dramatic team, helping develop the characters and the situations that would unfold nightly. And then there were the performers, the actors who would bring Fletcher Hodges, Pamelia Perkins, Hathaway Brown, and all the other characters to life. Many of these people worked at the club for years, even decades. They formed a tight-knit ensemble, developing running gags and character relationships that deepened over time. It was a collaboration unlike anything Disney had ever created. Part theme park, part theatrical production, part improv comedy. And it only worked because every person involved understood the vision. They were building a place that they wanted to go to themselves. Now let's take a step back. To understand why Pleasure Island mattered, you need to understand Walt Disney World in the 1980s. Michael Eisner had taken over as CEO in 1984, launching what historians call the Disney Renaissance. Epcot Center was packing in crowds. Disney MGM Studios was under construction. The company was expanding aggressively, and the question of what the guests did after dark had become urgent. Church Street Station in downtown Orlando proved that there was a massive demand for nighttime entertainment. This was a gated attraction with multiple clubs but one admission price and a Victorian steam era theme. It was wildly successful. and was pulling guests off Disney property every single night. Well, the mandate was clear. We have to build something better. Build something guests couldn't get anywhere else. Build something Disney. Now, the name came from a dark place, literally. In Walt Disney's 1940 Pinocchio, Pleasure Island is where wayward boys were taken to smoke cigars, drink beer, play pool, and generally misbehave, until they transform into donkeys and are sold into slavery. It's one of the most disturbing sequences in the Disney canon. Choosing this name for an adult entertainment district was a bold statement. Disney was reclaiming the concept, taking that image of forbidden pleasure and making it something playful, controlled, and ultimately safe. You could have your fun in this Pleasure Island, and you wouldn't wake up with hooves. Church Street Station provided the operational model: multiple venues, one admission price, easy movement between experiences. But Disney would add something Church Street couldn't, which is mythology. Before I continue, I want to say hi to folks in chat who popped in. I want to say hi to Alyssa and Neil. How you doing, Neil? Hope you're doing great. I saw Bitritz pop in here. Hello, Bitritz. And Jason Thibodeau's in the house. Hey, Jason, thanks for being here. It's great to have you all. As I continue, please do continue dropping in your memories and your recollections of this great place in chat, because not many people these days, at least, have good memories of the environment. Now, every inch of Pleasure Island traced back to a single larger-than-life figure, Merriweather Adam Pleasure. According to this mythology, Pleasure was an industrial magnate and globe-trotting collector who founded Pleasure Canvas and Sailmakers. He decorated his retreat with artifacts from expeditions around the world, eventually deciding to share his collection with the public. Why celebrate New Year's Eve just one night a year? Merriweather thought. Why not make every night a celebration? Well, this backstory was deliberately layered and mysterious. A retired showboat, the Bailey Finortner Floating Arts Center, later known as the Empress Lily, anchored the waterfront. Warehouse buildings housing various clubs suggested an old industrial district being repurposed for joy. Plaques and artifacts throughout the complex deepened the legend. Now, was Merriweather real? Had he vanished? Did he matter? The point was that Pleasure Island felt like a discovered place with a lived past. In later years, Disney tied this exact mythology into their expanding Society of Explorers and Adventurers universe. This was a secret organization connected to attractions worldwide. In fact, Merriweather's Fez now appears in other parks. His story echoes in places he never visited. Now, whether you knew the backstory or not, it shaped your experience. It gave the venues weight and texture, and it made Pleasure Island feel very real. Now, on May 1st, 1989, Pleasure Island opened to the public. The original model required guests to pay an entrance fee after 7 p.m., which then granted access to all the clubs. Before 7 p.m., the shops and restaurants were free to visit. This created a natural rhythm, daytime browsing giving way to nighttime celebration. Well, there were 6 clubs that anchored the experience from the beginning: the Adventurers Club, Mannequin's Dance Palace, XZFR Rock and Roller Drum, Neon Armadillo Music Saloon, the Comedy Warehouse, of course, and Videopolis East, which would soon become 8 Tracks. Now, there's one important note. The New Year's Eve every night tradition didn't begin on opening night. That signature celebration, the nightly countdown and the fireworks, it launched later in 1990 after the venue had found its footing. But from day one, the essential character of Pleasure Island was established. This was Disney After Dark. This was something entirely new. Now picture Pleasure Island at its peak. You'd enter through elaborate gates, passing signs that hinted at the Merriweather Pleasure backstory. The West End stage anchored outdoor performances. Streets wound between warehouse-style buildings, each housing a different venue. Music and light spilled from doorways. The smell of food from various restaurants mingled with the energy of thousands of guests. The genius of this layout was flow. You could easily move between clubs, sampling different experiences throughout the evening. Unlike a traditional nightclub where you'd stay in one place, Pleasure Island encouraged exploration. And every night, around midnight, everyone would gather in the streets for the countdown. Now, let me take you through some of these venues. If the Adventurers Club was the heart of Pleasure Island, well, there was a place called Mannequins, which was its pulse. This was a high-tech dance club, unlike anything else in Central Florida. The centerpiece was a massive rotating dancing floor, literally spinning as the guests danced. Surrounding it were multiple levels of staging, bars, and viewing areas. And everywhere, mannequins, full-size figures posed throughout the club. Some were static, some were animatronic, creating the unsettling sense that you were dancing among frozen people who might move at any moment. The music was cutting edge for its era. Progressive house, dance music mixes, the sound of 1990s club culture. The lighting rigs were spectacular. The DJ booth was a command center of technology. And for many guests, Mannequins was the main attraction. It was where you went to dance, to see and to be seen, to experience a nightclub that can only exist at Disney. Elaborate, theatrical, slightly strange. The final song on closing night, Everybody's Free to Feel Good by Rosella, a fitting send-off. To really capture what it felt like, let's take a look at some archival footage from 1994, the heart of Pleasure Island's golden age. And I'm very grateful to Mr. Dave Stragant for actually giving me this footage and allowing me to share it with you. So let's look at a few clips.
We're at Pleasure Island! And Pleasure Island, although I haven't been pleasured yet, it's still an island nonetheless. Alright. Some of the people hanging around here. We have some good dancing here. Alright, where the hell is Alright, I'm waiting for it. Where is it? Okay, you don't have it on record. It is on record. Find out and analyze it later. Right there.
Let's move forward a little bit. It's not working, but that's okay. I have another clip later. So you kind of get the sense of what the nightclub area was like. That rotating dance floor, mannequins watching from the shadows, the energy of a crowd dancing together at Disney which is what nightlife looked like at its peak. Now, every generation needs a place to celebrate its nostalgia, and for children of the 1970s, that place was called 8 Tracks. This was Disney's disco club, mirror balls, bell-bottoms encouraged, and a non-stop playlist of dance hits from the era of Studio 54. Now, the decor was unironically groovy, all orange and brown and gold, like stepping into a time capsule. 8 Tracks occupied the place originally used by Videopolis East, transforming into this retro haven in the early years of Pleasure Island's operation. For guests of a certain age, it was pure joy, a chance to relive their youth, or for younger visitors to experience a decade they'd only heard about. The DJ would spin everything from the Bee Gees to Donna Summer, and the crowd would respond with enthusiasm that suggested disco never really died. It just needed the right dance floor to come back to life. There was also the Comedy Warehouse that featured a resident improv troupe performing multiple shows nightly. Before improv comedy became mainstream, this venue was introducing Disney guests to the art form. The performers were genuinely talented, many going on to careers in television and film. There was a rock and roll beach club that delivered exactly what its name promised, a casual, energetic venue with live bands, classic rock covers, and an atmosphere of barefoot summer nights. Now, the roster of Pleasure Island venues changed over the years. The Neon Armadillo Music Saloon brought country western to the island until 1998. The Rock and Roller Drome attempted to combine roller skating with nightclub culture, but it closed early. Some experiments don't even work, not even at Disney. Now, later additions included BET Soundstage Club, celebrating Black entertainment and culture, and Motion, a high-energy dance venue. These reflected changing tastes and demographics as Pleasure Island evolved. And I'll show you a glimpse of that casual street party energy that connected all of these venues together. Again, thank you to Dave for sharing this.
Yes, you found those true decent decade there we grew up then. Work it!
Mike Pete.
Everybody!
I won't show some of these things, but you can find them on Dave's channel. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dave. What you're seeing in those clips is Pleasure Island at its peak. 1994, the golden age. The energy, the variety, the sense that anything could happen on a random March evening. Now this is what Disney chose to end. I do see some folks popping in chat. I saw Theme Park Giant. Hey, buddy. Dad, thanks for being here. If you haven't subscribed to Theme Park Giant, please do. He provides fantastic live streams from the parks every day. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're liking what you hear so far, hit that like button, share out the stream, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Now, one vessel in particular deserves special mention, which is the Empress Lily. That 220-foot long riverboat was permanently moored at what would become the Pleasure Island waterfront. It was named for Walt Disney's wife, Lillian, and it housed multiple restaurants and lounges. The Empress Lily predated Pleasure Island. It opened in 1977 as part of the original Lake Buena Vista shopping village. But when Pleasure Island arrived, the boat became part of the complex. Its elaborate Victorian design complementing the industrial warehouse aesthetic of the island. Now, the boat was later renamed Fulton's Crab House when Levy Restaurants took over operation. Now, today it operates as Paddlefish at Disney Springs. It's still floating, still serving, a survivor from an earlier era. Now we come to the heart of our story. The D23 Encyclopedia describes the Adventurers Club as featuring, quote, memorabilia supposedly from Merriweather Adam Pleasure's trips around the world, including some curios which interact with guests. That description, while accurate, dramatically understates what this venue actually was. The Adventurers Club wasn't a nightclub with a theme. It was a living theatrical experience, a place where the line between performer and guest blurred until it nearly disappeared. It was quite possibly the most ambitious piece of interactive entertainment that Disney ever created. Unlike any other venue at Pleasure Island, the Adventurers Club wasn't about music and it wasn't about dancing. It was about story, about characters, about the sense that you had stumbled into a private world that existed whether you visited there or not. This was Joe Rohde's masterpiece before Animal Kingdom, and it inspired a devotion unlike anything else at Walt Disney World. Let me take you inside. Now, you first entered through the zebra mezzanine, a circular balcony overlooking the main salon below. Walls are covered with artifacts, taxidermied animals of dubious authenticity, a framed parchment displaying the club creed. This was Graves' domain, the eternally stoic butler, building anticipation for what lay below. Descending to the main salon, you found yourself in the central hub. There was a bar along one wall, a stage for formal ceremonies, and dominating the space was a larger-than-life statue titled Zeus Goes Fishing. Every inch of wall space was covered with artifacts, each with a placard explaining its connection to Merriweather Pleasure. The level of detail was totally obsessive. Joe Rohde's signature before he had a signature. But this space wasn't static, it was alive. Off the main salon, the mask room featured walls covered with masks from around the world. And these masks moved. Eyes shifted, mouths laughed. Two large masks, Arnie and Claude, actually spoke to guests, commenting on the evening's events, occasionally arguing with each other. Colonel Critchlow Suchbench, a cable-controlled puppet, sat dormant in the main salon most evenings until the new member induction ceremony, when he'd awaken to lead the club song. Babylonia, a giant stone goddess face, would speak unprompted, offering blessings in a voice that echoed through the space. The Yakus, a mounted animal head of deliberately unclear species, would move and speak, sometimes to guests, sometimes to Babylonia, in what seemed like ongoing conversations you'd interrupted. And in the library, Fingers Zambezi, a haunted organ, would play with animatronic flourishes completely disconnected from the actual music. Now, these weren't just decorations. They transformed the space into something that watched, that listened, that participated. Now, the animatronics set the stage, of course, but the human performers made it truly magic. There was Hathaway Brown, the club's aviator, a roguish ladies' man with innuendo-laced conversation and the swagger of someone who'd laughed at danger. There was Otis T. Wren, the club treasurer, an inexplicably ichthyologist. The combination made no sense, which was entirely the point. There was Fletcher Hodges, the absent-minded club curator who had mounted every object in the club, gloriously scattered. There was Pamelia Perkins, club president, identifiable by her sash. Paula Pell, who would later become a writer and performer on Saturday Night Live, once portrayed Pamelia in the club's early years, in fact. There was Emil Blehall from Sandusky, Ohio, perennial Balderdash Cup contender. By the final weekends, both Emil Sr. and Emil Jr. appeared simultaneously. There was Graves, the butler, eternally unflappable, always named Graves, no matter who portrayed him. And there was a maid, the only character with a unique identity for each actress. There was Anil, Yvette, Sugar Snap, Gingivitis, Dusty Cabinets, and dozens more. Each actress created her own persona. Different actors portrayed these characters on different nights. Most performers played multiple roles. And over the years, they developed ongoing relationships with regular guests, remembering names, building running jokes, creating the sense that you weren't just visiting a show, you were rejoining a community. Now, the Adventurers Club ran multiple shows throughout every evening, ranging from intimate gatherings to full theatrical productions. The new member induction ceremony was performed 3 times nightly in the main salon. New guests were welcomed into the club with elaborate ritual. Now, first, there was a club salute. Maybe you could follow along as I describe it. I will not be demonstrating. You'd place the heel of your right hand just above your navel and wiggle it like a swimming fish. Then raise that hand to your mouth and take a drink from an imaginary glass. Finally, raise your hand above your head and declare, everybody say it with me, Kungaloosh. Next came the club creed, recited by all. Quote, we climb the highest mountains just to get a better view. We plumb the deepest oceans because we're daring through and through. We cross the scorching deserts, martini in our hands. We ski the polar ice caps in a tuxedo looking grand. We are reckless, brave, and loyal, and valiant toward the end. If you come in here a stranger, you will exit as a friend. And finally, you had the club song, led by Colonel Suchbench. Marching along were adventurers, singing the song of adventurers, up or down, north, south, east, or west, and adventurers' life is best. Kungaloosh. Now in the library, larger shows unfolded. There was a radio broadcast that recreated the club's fictional weekly radio program, which was called Tales of the Adventurers Club. It was styled after an old-time serials like The Shadow. The catch, half the cast was always missing, requiring audience members to step in and read parts. The Balderdash Cub competition was a beloved annual tradition where adventurers competed to tell the most outrageous tall tale. Emil Blehall tended to always win, judged by crowd applause. Almost, anyway. Now, on the final night of the club's existence, which was September 27th, 2008, the crowd decided to change history. When asked to applaud for Emil, they held back. When Otis T. Wren's name was called, they erupted. Otis won the Balderdash Cup for only the 4th time in the club's history. The Radiothon was a variety show where the club attempted to raise $2,000 to save itself from losing its lease. On closing night, the show, quote-unquote, failed to reach its goal, a poignant coincidence that no one planned but everyone felt. Other regular shows included Samantha's Cabaret, featuring Sterling's musical performances, and the Maid Sing-Along, where the current maid character led audience members through increasingly ridiculous songs. Now, the evening culminated in 2 connected events. There was a rhythm ritual, which began with adventurers appearing on the balconies of the mezzanine, playing percussive instruments in increasingly complex solos. The music built to a crescendo, As they descended to the main salon, all playing together, the colonel would respond by coming, quote, off duty and shouting rhythmic phrases for patrons to repeat. Finally, this led to the hoopla, the nightly finale. Guests filed into the library as Samantha Sterling led a sing-along beginning with The Happy Wanderer. Other adventurers performed their signature numbers. And every night closed with When the Saints Go Marching In, each remaining character inventing a verse on the spot. Now, beyond the formal shows, the Adventurers Club developed traditions that deepened the experience. Of course, Kungaloosh was both the official greeting and an actual beverage that you could order at the bar, a tropical cocktail that became synonymous with the club experience. The club motto appeared on walls and merchandise. Quote, "Some days you eat the bear, some days the bear eats you, but you always dress for the hunt." Holiday shows transformed the clubs throughout the year. The Halloween Jubilee saw characters in costume, Pamelia as a witch, Otis as a cowboy, Hathaway as a vampire, Emil as a space explorer. The holiday broadcast brought Christmas cheer and Pamelia's attempts to spread it, despite Otis's irritation. And on Christmas Eve, just before midnight, characters would take turns reading passages from 'Twas a Night Before Christmas as a quiet farewell to the evening. And when longtime performers left the cast, the club created a unique memorial. Custom-designed artifacts with obscure references to that person would be placed on display, typically in a locked cabinet in the treasure room. Now, that collection grew over the years, a hidden history of the performers who made the club live. What made the Adventurers Club inspire such fierce devotion? It wasn't just the quality of the shows, although they were excellent. It wasn't just the detail of the theming, although it was obsessive. It was a feeling of belonging. Regular visitors didn't feel like audience members. They felt like members of the club, of a community, of something special and slightly secret. Performers learned their names. Running jokes developed over years. The experience deepened with each return visit. Annual pass holders would visit weekly, sometimes more often. They knew when specific performers would be working. They had favorite characters, favorite shows, favorite spots in the library for the hoopla. They made friends with other regulars. Now, this was completely unprecedented for Disney. No other venue created this kind of long-term relationship with guests. You might love Space Mountain, but Space Mountain wouldn't remember your name. The Adventurers Club did. Now, when the closure was announced, those regular guests didn't just lose a nightclub. They lost a home. Let me get into chat. I saw some good friends pop in. I saw AJC, Magic TV. Hey, hope you're doing great. Thanks for being here. So again, if I missed you, please holler in chat and I'll say hi. Now, the 1990s were Pleasure Island's golden age. By the second year of operation, the complex had found its rhythm. The creative team's vision had taken root. And in 1990, the signature New Year's Eve every night celebrations began, transforming Pleasure Island from a nightclub district into something genuinely unique. Every evening, thousands of guests would gather in the streets of the countdown, the confetti, the fireworks. It was Disney magic after dark, communal joy manufactured nightly. Where else could you celebrate the New Year on a random Monday in March? Where else would strangers embrace at midnight, every midnight, year-round? The Adventurers Club built its devoted following during these years. Performers honed their characters. Repeat guests became regulars. The improvisational formula matured into something genuinely special. In 1996, Disney reorganized the area as Downtown Disney, with Pleasure Island becoming one of 3 interconnected zones alongside the marketplace and the west side. The integration brought more foot traffic, but it also diluted the quote-unquote adult playground identity that had defined the venue. Some original clubs closed and were replaced. The Neon Armadillo shut down in 1998, victim of changing musical tastes. The Roller Drum had already failed. New venues like BET Soundstage and Motion tried to capture evolving demographics. Through it all, the Adventurers Club remained. Its audience was loyal. Its performers were talented. Its formula, improvisational entertainment in an immersive space, seemed timeless. But the world around it was changing. The challenges accumulated gradually. In 2004, Disney eliminated the admission fee for Pleasure Island, switching to a pay-per-club model. The theory was that more guests would enter if the gate charge disappeared. The reality was more complicated. The fence that created a controlled environment was now wide open, changing the atmosphere. In 2006, Disney demolished the West End stage and the hub stage. Now, the official reason was to discourage large groups of local teenagers who were gathering on the island and causing disturbances. The unofficial reason, Pleasure Island was becoming a problem. January 1st, 2007 saw the dance clubs revert to a 21-plus admission policy, excluding younger guests entirely. The original New Year's Eve celebrations had already ended on December 31st, 2005. No more nightly countdowns and confetti. Competition from Orlando's growing nightlife scene made the relatively tame Pleasure Island feel quaint. Changing Disney priorities emphasized family experiences over adult entertainment. Corporate leaders looked at the space and they saw real estate that could be transformed into something much more profitable. Well, on June 27, 2008, Disney announced that all Pleasure Island nightclubs would close on September 27, 2008. The reaction was immediate and intense. An online petition at SaveTheAdventurersClub.info gathered over 2,750 signatures in the first 72 hours. Letter writing campaigns targeted company executives. Blogs and fan sites exploded with grief and anger. None of it changed the decision. September 27th, 2008 was a Saturday. Some guests began lining up at 9 a.m. for an event that wouldn't start until evening. By the time the clubs opened, Pleasure Island was at capacity. Thousands of people came to say goodbye. Many past performers returned. Cast members who'd moved on to other careers came back to play their characters one more time. The evening had a quality of a reunion and a funeral combined. On the waterfront stage, Frankie and the West End Boys performed. At Mannequins, dancers filled the rotating floor until the final song. And at the Adventurers Club, the shows ran as always, but not quite as always. During the Balderdash Cup, the crowd chose Otis T. Wren over Emile Blihall, a rare victory for Otis. During the Radiothon, the club failed to raise the money it needed to survive. And in a moment that longtime fans would never forget, Marcel returned. Now, Marcel was an anthropoid character, a performer in an ape suit, in other words, who had delivered mail and assisted the staff in the club's earliest years. He hadn't been seen regularly in over a decade, but on the final night, during the final hoopla, Marcel appeared and invited the permanent members of the Adventurers Club to accompany him on a year-long safari. It was a farewell that acknowledged the end was coming, and it transformed it into one last adventure. The last Kungaloosh was raised, the last saint went marching, and by the next morning, workers were already removing signs and painting over logos. Pleasure Island was gone. Now, Disney's official reasoning emphasized changing demographics and the desire to create a more family-friendly environment. The company promised that the Adventurers Club space would be preserved for potential future use, but fans were not convinced. The closure became a touch point in larger debates about what Disney should be. Was the company abandoning its adult audience? Was it trading creative ambition for commercial safety? Was there any place left at Walt Disney World for experiences that weren't aimed at children? In February 29, Disney announced that the Adventurers Club would reopen for private party rentals through September 2009, a brief reprieve that allowed a few more Kungalooshes before the final end. Well, the larger complex transformed into the Landing at Disney Springs. The Adventurers Club building became the Edison, an industrial-themed restaurant that preserved some architectural elements while completely replacing the experience. The party was over. Now, if you visit Disney Springs today, you can still walk the same paths that once wound through Pleasure Island. The waterfront is still there, the general layout remains, but almost nothing else does. The Edison occupies the Adventurers Club space. Inside, you might recognize the general structure, the high ceilings, the industrial aesthetic, but the masks are gone, the characters are gone, and the story is gone. Other Pleasure Island buildings have been similarly transformed or demolished entirely. The gated entertainment district has become an open shopping and dining complex. Now, it's pleasant enough, commercially successful, utterly without the magic that once lived there. Yet, the Adventurers Club community endured. The Kungaloosh Society, Inc. is a Florida nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving interactive improvisational theater. They host events that bring together former cast members and devoted fans, keeping the spirit alive through new performances, new venues. The last semi-public event at the actual Adventurers Club space took place on September 25th, 2009, a Kungaloosh convention party, a final farewell before the building's transformation. Annual gatherings continue. Fans meet at Disney conventions, at private events, at informal reunions. Kungaloosh still echoes wherever former members encounter each other, a greeting that identifies you as part of something that existed, something special. Merchandise has become collectible too. The club pins that performers once gave to participating guests now sell for significant sums. T-shirts, cups, photographs, anything that prove you were there has value to those who understand. The performers, too, have reunited multiple times since the closure. On November 23, 2014, the Adventurers Club cast reassembled at D23's Destination D event for one last performance. On December 31st, 2015, the cast reunited for a Countdown to Midnight event at Disney's Yacht and Beach Club Resort. On April 29th, 2019, some cast members gathered to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Pleasure Island. Now, these performers gave years of their lives to characters they created and refined. The club closure didn't end those relationships. It transformed them into something more precious because it became finite. Now, when the Adventurers Club closed, its artifacts scattered to the winds, but not all were lost. Hong Kong Disneyland's Mystic Point, which opened in 2013, features the Explorers Club restaurant. On its walls, you can find masks from the Adventurers Club mask room. Lord Henry Mystic, the lead character of that area, notes and displayed journal excerpts that the way that these masks moved made him nervous enough to relocate them from his main museum. Since Mystic Point is set in 1908, this establishes the mask's earliest chronological home. And at Disney Springs, Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar features a face of Babylonia, the goddess of women and all things fertile, relocated from the main salon to this Indiana Jones-themed venue. D Street in Disney Springs displayed the stuffed peacock scooter and several other items on its walls before that store's closure. And the Jungle Cruise at Magic Kingdom contains multiple references. Fast Pass machine luggage tags once bore Emile and Pamelia's addresses. In 2021, the crashed plane scene received new stenciling, quote, "The amazing Hathaway Brown, our aviator, apparently met an unfortunate end." The Jungle Skipper Canteen restaurant offers Kungaloosh Spiced Excursion Ale and features Perkins Thai noodles on its menu, named for Pamelia. Some props were sold at auction by performers who owned them. Others were offered internally to cast members. The artifacts that once filled every inch of the Adventurers Club now live in private collections, in Disney archives, and in the corners of other attractions where observant guests might notice them. Now, here's something that might have seemed impossible in 2008. The Adventurers Club has become part of Disney's expanding mythology. The Society of Explorers and Adventurers is an organization that Imagineering has been weaving through attractions worldwide. Members include Harrison Hightower III from Tokyo Disney Sea's Tower of Terror, Lord Henry Mystic from Hong Kong Disneyland's Mystic Manor, and various other characters scattered across Disney parks. Now, the Adventurers Club has been retroactively established as a successor or a branch organization to SEA, connected to this large universe of explorers and eccentrics. At the Jungle Skipper Canteen, there's a display of SEA membership, fezzes, hats, that includes one belonging to Merriweather Pleasure, the fictional founder of Pleasure Island himself. At Disney's Aulani Resort in Hawaii, in fact, Auntie's Beach House Kids Club contains a portrait and letter from Pamelia Perkins. The letter identifies a group called the Pillagers Brigade as a predecessor to the Adventurers Club, with a young Harrison Hightower III among its members. Now, the Adventurers Club lives on in Disney canon, even if the building doesn't. Its characters and mythology has been absorbed into a larger story, one still being told across multiple continents. Now, for fans, this is bittersweet. This is acknowledgement that what they loved matters enough to preserve, even if they can't experience it as they once did. Now, what did Pleasure Island teach Disney? Well, Joe Rohde took the principles he developed at the Adventurers Club, and he applied them to Animal Kingdom. The immersive environments, the sense of discovery, the feeling that this world exists whether you're there or not, All of this traces back to what he learned creating a 1937's Explorers Club in Orlando. When Disney built Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, they incorporated cast member interaction inspired by the Adventurers Club model. Characters engage with guests, respond to choices, create personalized experiences. Now, it's not quite the same, nothing could be, but the DNA is definitely recognizable. And the club also demonstrated that what happens when you build genuine community around an experience, annual pass holders who visit weekly, guests who form real friendships, entertainment that deepens with repeated exposure. These lessons informed how Disney thinks about loyalty and engagement. And then there's a cautionary tale. What happens when you close something people love? The anger that followed Pleasure Island's end, the passionate advocacy, the lasting grief, Disney learned that killing beloved experiences has consequences beyond the immediate balance sheet. Whether they learned enough remains to be seen. Now, which brings us to a question for our new year, 2026. Could something like the Adventurers Club exist today? Well, Disney has the immersive technology far more advanced than anything available in 1989. They have performers trained in interactive entertainment. Galaxy's Edge proved that. They have proven concepts and experiences where guests become participants rather than creators. The question isn't capability, it's will. Is there appetite in the modern Disney for art that can't scale, for experience that reward the dedicated over the casual, for magic that takes years to fully appreciate? Now, the Galactic Star Cruiser tried something similar. It was an immersive, character-driven experience where guests live inside a story. It closed after less than 2 years, a financial failure despite creative ambition. The lesson that they may have learned isn't that interactive experiences work, but interactive experiences are risky. And yet, the SEA mythology keeps expanding. New references appear in attractions around the world. Now, Imagineers clearly love this universe. They keep building it quietly, persistently. Merriweather's Fez sits in the Jungle Skipper canteen. Pamelia Perkins writes letters from Hawaii. The Adventurers Club masks watch guests in Hong Kong. Someone at Disney remembers. Someone keeps adding pieces. Now, whether that someone has the power to build something new, something that captures the spirit of what was lost, remains the open question. For now, we have memory, we have community, and we have Kungaloosh. And we have hope that someday, somewhere, the party might start again. Now, a reminder, we evaluate immersion, storytelling, and delight on a scale of 1 to 10. We're doing this retrospectively, evaluating what was, not what is. Inside the Adventurers Club, you were in 1937. Every artifact, every placard contributed to the sense of space. The animatronic characters transformed the space from static to living. Masks that laughed, a goddess who spoke, a mounted animal head that seemed to follow conversations. The human performers completed the illusion, treating you as a fellow member who belonged there. Beyond the Adventurers Club, immersion varied. Mannequins created an unsettling atmosphere with its frozen figures and rotating dance floor. But other venues were essentially themed nightclubs, atmosphere without transportation. The Adventurers Club alone would deserve a 9 for immersion, but averaged across Pleasure Island, I think an 8 captures this achievement. Now, the Merriweather Adam Pleasure mythology was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of layered backstory that Disney excels at creating. But most venues didn't actively tell stories. The Comedy Warehouse offered improv, not ongoing characters. 8 tracks celebrated an era, not a narrative. The Adventurers Club was a magnificent exception. It told multiple stories simultaneously. Merriweather Pleasure's backstory, the ongoing character stories of Hathaway and Emile and Pamelia, and most importantly, your story, as you were inducted as a member. The radio broadcast cast you are as a performer. The Balderdash Cup made your applause a deciding vote. Now, this participatory storytelling anticipated immersive theater and experiences by decades. So we have to give it an 8. Now, on the delight side, here's where the entire complex truly shone. New Year's Eve every night was genius, manufactured joy that felt genuine. Strangers became friends. Random Tuesday nights became celebrations. The variety of venues meant something for everyone, and the ability to curate your own evening created a sense of freedom and possibility. Now, the Adventurers Club delivered delight in ways no other Disney experience ever has. The masks making you jump when you see them. The characters making you laugh. The Kungaloosh toast making you feel like you'd found your tribe. The community, the sense of belonging created joy that most entertainment can't achieve. 9 out of 10. Pleasure Island knew how to throw a party, and the Adventurers Club knew how to make you feel like you'd come home. So overall, Pleasure Island as a whole, give it an 8.32 out of 10. Now it's your turn. I've shared my scores, but this show has always been more about than one person's opinion. If you'd like to cast your own vote, please do head to www.grandandmiraculous.show and use the code ISLE, I-S-L-E. Let me pop that back up. Rate Pleasure Island using the same 3 pillars: immersion, storytelling, and delight. How well did it transport you? How effective did it tell its story? How much joy did it deliver? Now, whether you visited 100 times or are learning about it for the first time tonight, your perspective matters. Vote, and let's see what this community thinks, what Pleasure Island truly deserves. So where does this leave us? Pleasure Island scores at 8.32, with the Adventurers Club pulling that average significantly upward. It's a strong score, and for an experience that no longer exists. Now let me be clear about what was lost. Pleasure Island was more than a nightclub district. It was Disney's most ambitious attempt to create adult entertainment that met their stories of quality and immersion. It was a laboratory for techniques that would later transform their theme parks. It was a community, a home, a place where people belonged. The Adventurers Club was the pinnacle of that experiment. It proved that interactive improvisational entertainment could work on a Disney scale. It showed that it showed that guests didn't just want to watch stories. They wanted to live them. It created something so beloved that nearly 2 decades after its closure, people still gather to say Kungaloosh. Now, what does the closure of Pleasure Island say about Disney's evolution? Perhaps it says that corporations struggle with experiences that can't be easily replicated. Every Adventurers Club performance was unique. It was dependent on the chemistry between specific performers and specific guests. You couldn't build another one in Tokyo or Shanghai and expect it to work the same way. It was gloriously, stubbornly singular. Perhaps it says that the pressure to maximize revenue eventually overwhelms creative achievement. The Adventurers Club wasn't a money machine. It was art. It was expensive, labor-intensive art that required training and nurturing and trust. The return on investment was measured in loyalty and love, currencies that don't appear on quarterly reports. Perhaps it says that some things once lost are lost forever. Disney Springs is a successful shopping and dining district, no doubt. It generates revenue. It serves guests. But it doesn't create magic the way Pleasure Island did. Some experiences can't be replicated, only remembered. Now, if you were lucky enough to visit the Adventurers Club, I hope you remember it well. I hope you remember the salute, the creed, the song. I hope you remember the first time a mask made you jump, or a character called you by name, or you found yourself singing when the Saints Go Marching In at the top of your lungs with 100 strangers who felt like friends. If you never had the chance to visit, I hope this episode has given you some sense of what was lost. It was special. It was unique. It was a kind of creative achievement that happens when talented people are given freedom to pursue a vision. And that is why it was grand and miraculous. Kungaloosh. Now, at the top of the show, I asked when the Adventurers Club closed. Its famous talking masks from the mask room were relocated to another park. The answer is at the Explorers Club restaurant at Mystic Point, Hong Kong Disneyland. Now, when Mystic Manor opened in 2013, the masks found a new home on those walls. And in the mythology of that attraction, Lord Henry Mystic's journal notes that the way that those masks moved made him nervous enough to move them from his main museum. So the masks continue to unsettle guests just on the other side of the world. If you got it right, congratulations, you're a true adventurer. Now, as I do, I like to talk about next week. Next week on Grand and Miraculous, we're headed back to the happiest place on earth, but not to dance or ride or wander through futuristic pavilions. We're heading to the woods of backwoods America, where a stage sits waiting under the stars, and something utterly unique has been entertaining guests for nearly 50 years. They're not human. They're not quite animatronic in the traditional sense. They're musicians with a mission to play country music, tell jokes, and create an experience so distinctly Disney that it has inspired a devoted following across generations. This, of course, is the Country Bear Jamboree, a show that shouldn't work, an attraction that defies categorization, and one of the most polarizing experiences Walt Disney World has ever created. Now, some guests consider it a masterpiece of Americana and puppet artistry. Others consider it, well, let's just say they have different opinions. Join us next week as we explore one of Disney's most beloved and most misunderstood attractions. We'll meet the bears, we'll examine why this unlikely show has endured when so many others have vanished, and we'll ask the question that has haunted Disney fans for decades. Is it Country Bear Jamboree a hidden gem, or is it simply unbearable? Next week, episode 27, the Country Bear Jamboree. Now, I'd like to end where we began, with the words that made the Adventurers Club what it was. Normally at this point, I recite some words from Ray Bradbury, but I think given tonight, it's totally acceptable to recite the Club Creed, recited by thousands of guests over 19 years, written in 1927 by Merriweather Adam Pleasure, or perhaps by the Imagineers who created him. We climb the highest mountains just to get a better view. We plumb the deepest oceans because we're daring through and through. We cross the scorching deserts, martini in our hand. We ski the polar ice cap in tuxedo looking grand. We're reckless, brave, and loyal, and valiant to the end. If you come in here a stranger, you'll exit as a friend. Now, these words outlive the building. They outlive the clubs. They're still whispered by people who were there, still shouted by people who never got the chance to visit. And somewhere in Orlando, in Hong Kong, in the hearts of everyone who ever said Kungaloosh, this creed still echoes. If you come in here a stranger, you will exit as a friend. And that is why it was grand and miraculous. Kungaloosh, everybody.